So, so hello to each and everyone joining us from across the globe. We are here today to step into one of humanity's most vital and volatile conversations: interaction and intersection of gender, religion, and region. Think for a moment about these two forces. Religion, a force of profound personal identity, community, and cosmic meaning. It has built hospitals, inspired sense, and obviously, religion has even justified war and war crimes. And gender, on the other hand, it is a fundamental lens through which we experience power, belonging, and selfhood. It dictates roles, shapes expectations, and defines narratives from the moment we are born. We recognize that for many, religion has been a source of deep conflict regarding gender identity and roles, a barrier of equality, and a justification for rigid hierarchies. Yet, for many, religion is a pathway for enlightenment. Religion is a path for our liberation. We stand at this critical juncture in history where the conversation happening shape the future of global society. The goal of this panel discussion is to indulge the audience into a thought provocative and encouraging discussion. Let this not be a mere exchange of facts, but a movement of the spirit. I, as the moderator of this panel discussion and the vice chair of gender and politics, will introduce you to our respected speakers: Taslima Tariq, Bruno Machos, Soumya Tiwari, and Aman Maheshwar. Our first speaker of this panel discussion will be Taslima Tariq. She is a dedicated researcher and advocate for social justice. She holds an MA in History and Asian Studies from North-South University and a double BSS in Global Studies, with a minor in Anthropology from Independent University, Bangladesh. Her academic results earned her a place at the Dean and Vice Chancellor's merit lists. Her publication, Politics, Media, and Rohit Vemula, a critical discourse analysis, and MA thesis on JNU's 2016 Azadi movement, a critical discourse analysis of the Times Now, India Today, and Z News, critiques media-driven marginalization in the context of India. While her BSS thesis and poster presentation at the RUEC First International Research Conference 2025 explored the socio-cultural and economic challenges faced by the Bangladesh's Orang community. Her topic for today's discussion is surviving under gender apartheid in Iran and Afghanistan. And she is also one of the co-vice chairs for Gender and Identity SRC IAPSS. Taslima, the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm just going to share my presentation now. Actually, yeah. So I'll just present it. Just one second. Sorry, I'm facing some technical difficulties. Just one second. It's all just one second.
Sure, no problem.
Almost done. So, is the slide available? Like, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will basically be presenting on surviving under gender apartheid in Iran and Afghanistan, right? So, like as of 2025, the Taliban has been in power for like 4 years, right? And this is but other than the Taliban in Afghanistan, there has also been a lot of repression against women and the girls in Iran. So both in Iran and Afghanistan, they're having to live in a system which is designed to limit them, but also to sort of eliminate women from public life. And this is not only just discrimination, or this is not only just like a social example of discrimination. Rather, it is considered gender apartheid. And the reason it's considered gender apartheid is because it's a very deliberate, institutionalized way of oppressing, where a regime is using gender to sort of oppress women. And this is very similar to other kind of apartheids that we have seen. For example, racial apartheid in South Africa. And it is, since racial apartheid is sort of uh, condemned worldwide, then gender apartheid is also a very serious issue that millions of women are having to face in Iran and Afghanistan. So just another way of to explain the concept of gender apartheid would be that it is actually a crime against humanity. And the reason behind it is because it's a systemic way of dominating, it's a systemic way of establishing segregation. It is sort of replacing the concept of race with gender. And that is the reality of what the women are having to go through in Afghanistan and in Iran, right? So for example, in Afghanistan, the Talibans have actually issued several decrees since 2021, where women are being systematically stripped of uh, having the right to education, having the right to work, having the right to just move around on their own. And even the Taliban has sort of restricted women from talking to each other, or just raising their voice in public, right? On the other hand, with Iran, it's a little bit less restrictive, but restrictive nonetheless. And for example, in Iran, laws enforce that women always have to wear compulsory veiling. Uh, Women do not have there are restrictions on their traveling, right? So without like a proper um, male companion, they cannot travel easily. And even the women who have sort of tried to be defiant of that issue has been flogged. And there was the case of Masa Amin, who was beaten to death, all because she decided to show some of her hair, right? And be it UN experts, or be it other human rights organizations, these regimes are considered gender apartheid, and as a result it should be codified as an international crime. So going back to Afghanistan, is that, see, the Taliban's assault on women's right is much more broader than what's happening in Iran, right? So women have been banned from joining secondary schools, have been banned from going to universities, right? So about 1.4 million women cannot access education. Women cannot go to work. Women cannot, uh, under the morality law, women cannot even talk publicly. And more than that, more importantly, that see, giving women the opportunity to pursue medical training is really important, because as you know, there are some services that can be provided to women only by women, right? So for example, like if you need a gynecologic test, or if you just need a breast cancer check, women prefer that there's another woman present. But even the Taliban has sort of banned women from accessing medical training. In fact, there are some cases where the windows of a shop, or windows of a parlor, or windows of a home had to be blocked to prevent others from going, from like having an access to women, but like the windows have been blocked so that they just can't see women. And that's so inhumane, because women have the right to be at least seen, right? So and this, like, gender apartheid, especially in Afghanistan, has an economical downfall as well, right? Because um, there are women who are working so hard, and but if they're forced out of their job place, then the economy is hurt. And maternal mortality rate has gone up to 50%. And in fact, because of all these issues, sort of like girls who are very young are being forced into child marriage. And even since Afghanistan is a war torn country, there were families which are completely woman dependent, like they're dependent on their mothers or they're dependent on widows. And those families are literally being torn apart because of Taliban's rules about women. And more than that, after Taliban has come to power, countries like Iran and Pakistan has forced so many Afghan refugees back into their country, right? Which has put Afghan women refugees, more into trouble, because at least they could have accessed basic education in Iran and Pakistan, but they can't do that in Afghanistan. Um, so um, See, thing is that with Iran, like with Afghanistan, women are just alienated completely. But with Iran, women, so the compulsory hijab enforcement, that is basically done through morality policing or surveillance, right? So if someone has sort of broken that rule, they are sort of prosecuted. They are sort of like their homes and families are raided, and then there is the death penalty. And women also do not have access to equal inheritance. So women get unequal inheritance, right? And sort of like, I would say the Masa Amin movement, which sparked the Women Life Freedom Uprising, led to death of more than 500 protesters, which is just an indication of how the Iranian women are sort of fighting against a very repressive regime. So, for example, in Afghanistan, women still are trying to form underground schools. They are trying to form home-based businesses, for example, tailoring, or just learning basic skills online. But that is also very dependent on whether you have internet, whether you have access to mobile, whether your family supports women to come and access those skills. And if they're tailoring, then if the family is supportive, only then their materials are sold, or else it's just not economically well for the woman, right? And there are some secret literacy programs as well, where it's run by some local NGOs, it's run by some grassroots organizations. But if you're caught, then you risk literally like death, right? And this is not only leading to economic issues, this is also leading to like mental health issues such as suicide. Like there are so the regimes are so repressive of the woman that they choose suicide over this kind of repressive situation, right? And then there is also the concept of sort of deportation. Like even if women leave Iran or Afghanistan, and say they go to a better place, they can, because of unstable legal status, they have to flee back to their country, even if back in that country they will be domestically abused, or if even if they have been successful in the new country. So it's not that sort of fleeing the country is a option for this woman, right? And then, and nevertheless, there are a lot of women who are dreaming, right? So there are cases where the women are dreaming of becoming an engineer, but she has to sell cosmetics online. So even that's an issue where how can you how can you sort of go abroad if you don't have money? So if you have a dream, everybody wants to fulfill it. But in the case of this woman, where do you get the money to at least even go abroad or and to do something? Even and those who do sometimes are forced to flee, right? So Mm, but nevertheless, like in Iran, I would say that things are a bit better because there have been movements of which are very defiant of the region, be it removing hijabs in public places, despite the rates, be it like forcing mixed gender gatherings, even though they know that it can lead to persecution of both genders, right? And there have been videos which have gone viral where women are seen dancing and just expressing themselves, not wearing the hijab. And there are some organizations are also focusing on personal stories of resilience, right? So there, for example, activists are being sentenced to death, but uh, they are proud of their decision. Why? Because it is a sign of resilience. There and I would, and that's why I would say that while these women are victims, they're also warriors. So there are women Afghan footballers who have sort of had to flee the country, but then they're still playing. They're still passionate about the game. There are so many Iranian activists, including rappers, male rappers, who have sort of been sentenced just for standing up for the right of women. And I think the secret networks and just online voices, hunger strikes, which have sort of grabbed attention globally, sort of shows how these women are fighting against gender apartheid. And I would say that this um, act of defiance comes with a cost. This leads to social isolation. Your families might not support you. Your society will not support you. This comes with poverty because you might not be able to land a job. This leads to trauma because you might be arrested. You might be flogged, right? And even there are families which are having to marry off their daughters just because there is no way that you can provide for a daughter in Afghanistan, right? And just overall, the treatment of Afghani refugees from Pakistan and from Iran has sort of like exasperated this despair because women are having to come back to a country where they need literal male guardians to survive, but then they may not have those guardians. So the world can't look away. There's no way the world can look away because if the world had looked away from South Africa, we'd still have racial apartheid. So gender apartheid is the same as racial apartheid, and it needs to be codified as a crime of humanity. So there are countries like Canada, Australia, and then there is Amnesty, there's human rights violations, there's UN, which have sort of inquired and have urged accountability and have sort of even there are activists who are saying that the Taliban should be taken to the International Court of Justice. So it is very important that the international comes together and act to support refuge to these women from these very repressive countries. They should fund underground education, and they should like stop normalizing relationships with Taliban, right? So if you normalize relationships, then it might actually normalize this what they're doing to the woman. And just like in conclusion, obviously I would say that surviving gender apartheid is a huge deal. It's an act of courage in like a daily life, and I think it teaches other women who are not living in Iran and Afghanistan that what is resilience. But survival is not enough. Like this situation needs to be fixed immediately because women deserve to thrive. And I believe that with like this year is coming to an end, but I do believe that by next year, I hope that at least gender apartheid is recognized as an international crime. The perpetrators, including Taliban's, are held accountable, and more women who are from lesser oppressive regions stand with women of Afghanistan and Iran, because and that has already happened with the Women Life Freedom movement. And I want to finish my my talk by just honoring Masa Amin one more time. And thank you. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for the insightful discussion. I
Do you
have
think you can
just
stop my? Huh.
uh, yeah, I have just one question from you. That we are an international students political science association. So my question directly goes in this way: that how can the international community amplify the voices of the marginalized community of women in both Iran and Afghanistan? Because we know that the international community is very much restricted, especially in Afghanistan. So, how can the international community take a stance on this? Thank you.
I think the first thing is to recognize gender apartheid as a crime of humanity, crime against humanity. My point is that if racial apartheid, which had happened in South Africa, can be considered a heinous crime, a heinous international crime, then why cannot systematic marginalization against 50% of your population be considered crime against humanity? It needs to be considered that. Secondly, I think um, standing up for people on on a global level, on an international level, has become so much easier due to social media and due to media coverage, right? Look at what happened with Palestine. Like, there was the Israel Palestine situation, and literally students from every university came out and stood for those people. They thought that this was right, they did it. Then why cannot women who think that gender apartheid needs to be recognized, Iran and Afghanistan needs to stop their apartheid right now, why cannot they come out in bulk and take up public spaces, take up university places? um, I have seen so many debates on, say, what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Ukraine. Then women who are living in a more privileged way. For example, in Bangladesh, I still have the right to access education. I have the right to access public life. So if I, along with like 10 or 10 or like 100 and 200 women comes out, and we stand against gender apartheid, that's still raising awareness, because the women of Afghanistan can't, right? But see, thing is that yes, international presence in both of these countries are low. But think about it: the death of Masa Amin, this touched this, like, anyone who was seeing the death of Masa Amin and who was following the Masa Amini movement was like, okay, this is it. This cannot go longer. Women cannot be beaten for not wearing a veil. This is not happening. So if we take a stance like this, then I believe a lot of people will at least understand that this is a very serious issue. And I believe that the situation cannot be normalized. I understand that Afghanistan is a very underprivileged country. It's a war-torn country, but that does not mean that you get to normalize your relationship with Taliban. Because if you normalize that relationship, then you normalize what's happening to the women. So if you bring Taliban to your country and you do not allow female journalists to enter that meeting, it has happened. It has happened. So that cannot happen. If you are normalizing your relationship with Taliban, okay, maybe on an international level it gives you some level of benefit, but on a national level it's just disrespectful towards women, right? And I think if the moment you recognize a crime as an international crime, you can hold someone accountable very easily, right? So Israel, for example, is one of the most powerful country in the Middle East, but they are sort of being taken to the court, to the International Court of Justice. They're being sort of being accused of carrying out a genocide. Whether it gets proven or not is another concept, is another discussion altogether. So if you recognize gender apartheid as a crime, and if you take Iran and only then can you take Iran and Afghanistan to the International Court of Justice, and only then you can force them to remove these laws. So I think that is a way, and but there is also the way of sort of funding educational materials online, right? So you make educational materials very easy so that women can just sit online in a home. But then there is accessibility to laptop, accessibility to internet. So that is also an issue, and which means Afghanistan also needs fund. On top of that, I do believe that the neighboring countries and the developed countries have a responsibility. Like what Pakistan and Iran did is it's vehement. It's just not respectful. Like they just forced Afghani refugees to go back to their country, knowing that these female refugees who they are forcing out of their country will be incredibly vulnerable in their own country. And then developed countries, which are like the European countries and USM, needs to sort of understand that, okay, while illegal immigration is an internal issue, we need to understand that those who we are deporting might end up getting killed, might end up getting abused more in their country. So it's a very complicated issue, which is, which requires a very complex solution. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your insightful discussion. Our next speaker is from Brazil. He is Bruno Matos, and I will just take a moment to introduce him to the entire audience. Bruno Matos Rodrigues Pereira is a bachelor student in political science at Faculdade Estácio de Sá Ribeirão Preto, Brazil. He also works as academic programs officer at International Association for Political Science Students, IAPSS Canada. Bruno's research focuses on political participation, social movements, and rights of marginalized communities, with a particular interest in LGBTQ and Black people's rights. He has been actively involved in research, advocacy, and consultancy projects on public policy and human rights, contributing to academic and social initiatives aimed at promoting equality, inclusion, civic management. His work combines theoretical research with practical efforts to strengthen social justice frameworks at both local and international level. Bruno will speak on Black people, gender disparities, and religiosity in different regions of Brazil. He will delve into the intersections of race, gender, and faith. Bruno, the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me share my presentation. I did it a panel. So everybody can see. So what I'm presenting, it's more about the disparities that happen in Brazil nowadays. In Brazil, we are a multi-religious country that has this reason. The regions of Brazil have their own religions concentration. Although Brazil have much more of Christians, Catholic Christians here, Brazil, it's a multi-religious country with a lot of disparities going through women and Black people for the most. So the context here is that religion in Brazil blends African, indigenous, and European traditions, creating a diverse and complex spiritual landscape. For Black Brazilians, faith has long served as a space of identity, community, and resistance. So what's the point here? Brazil was a country that have about 400 years of slavery of African Black people and indigenous people. So their religions, till nowadays, because we suffer from the from what happened during these 400 years, there's still marks of this, as Black people and indigenous people don't have the same access for things in life, like a work job, for university, for education, for health, for everything here. These things are very complex for Black people and indigenous people. So the place of religion, their identity, that space of identity, community, and resistance. There are the black and indigenous religion served as a space of inclusion, especially for women, because in the traditional Catholic that we have here, women plays a secondary place in the society, and that what not happens in the indigenous and Black religions. So it was a way to preserve ancestry, Hebrew belonging, and confronting the social exclusion. Religious practice often becomes a means of expressing cultural memory and sustaining collective strength in the face of inequality. So that's one of the biggest points here. This religious practice that we have are a point of community for those excluded people from the society, for the Black people, for the indigenous people, for women, for the minorities we have here in Brazil. So we have gender inequalities. Black women lead Afro-Brazilian religions like Candomblé and Umbanda, yet face racial and gender barriers in Christian institutions. Spiritual authority often reflects social hierarchies. So what we have here, you don't see women and trans people playing a key role on the Christian religions we have here. You don't see, they don't have that space. They don't have that space. Women have that space, but trans women, trans men don't have that space in that religion. So they find their spaces in the Afro-Brazilian religions that are the space they have to play their key role. Everybody plays a key role in that spaces. So it's not only a place of worship, a place of faith, but it's a place of being part of the society. You are included as a key person, as everybody is a key person. We have, I brought here a graphic. Uh, where is the religions we have in Brazil? It's the last graphic that we have. So most of part of Brazilian people are Roman Catholic. A great part is evangelical. A great part too don't have a specific religion, and a little part play that African Brazilian religions. But what happens here is that we have that African Brazilian religion so marginalized, like they are so marginalized, like the Black people, like the trans people, like the disabled people, that even people that are from that religion don't say that they are from that religion. Most of people say they are Roman Catholic, or they are irreligion, or they are Spiritism, because Spiritism plays a key role in those religions as well. Just to not say they are African Brazilian religions, because these African Brazilian religions as well, they are excluded from society as well. Those people are excluded from society. So we have regional variations here. In the northeast of the country, we have strong Afro-religious presence and female leadership in terreiros, that is the place of worship of these Black Brazilian religions. What's the point here? The northeast of Brazil is one of the most concentration of Black people, because all of the people that were enslaved, they are brought from Brazil to this part of the country, and most of those people stayed there. So In Southeast, it's a religious pluralism, evangelical rise, and activism for religious freedom. Even though I see uh, black Brazilian and African religions plays a key role for those people. I'm seeing at the southeast of the country, those people are having more keyholes in other religions as well, because the southeast of the country, like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, they are big metropolis. So it's a big moisture of everything, and everybody has the right to have a keyhole, which is very different from the South, with a minority presence and an Eurocentric dominance, faith as identity preservation. I live in the South, in the very South of Brazil. As I am a black person, most of people here don't are black person. They are white persons, because in the South of Brazil, they excluded those black persons, and in the late 80s, in the initial in the 90s, European immigrants came from here on the south of Brazil, and they are given lands and everything and every privilege they could have for the government. And those black people were excluded. So what you see here in the south of Brazil is where I live. It's a minority presence and an Eurocentric dominance faith as identity preservation. What I see is that women, especially trans women, don't play a key role here. They are much more segregated than in other parts. So that's a big disparity you have from the south of Brazil, because Brazil it's a continental country with multicultural, multi religions, like I was saying, and you see you have a big disparity from here in the south of Brazil, with a lot of white people and black people don't play in a key role, don't have the same opportunity, as well as women don't having the same opportunity as men, and as well as disabled people, trans people, LGBT, everybody from the LGBT community don't have the same rights. Even though we have our constitution saying everybody's equal, everybody has the same rights, you don't see that much applying in the day to day. So you have that disparities in Brazil, especially from south to northeast, and from the north of Brazil, which is the Amazon rainforest, which have the most indigenous people here in Brazil, where they live. They don't live in the forest like everybody thinks. No, they live in communities within the forest, but it's the place where you have much more of indigenous people. Indigenous people. You have a big metropolis, which is Manaus, and you see how those religions were taken from the indigenous people. You see that nowadays they play a Christianism, which was much more the most, and have their faith lost through those years of colonization in Brazil. So indigenous people and indigenous religion as well. Although we have a lot of indigenous communities, indigenous people from very different styles that and very different cultures here in Brazil, they maintain something in common that was the keyhole of women, and everybody has this keyhole in their communities. And it was a thing that the colonization of Brazil with European vision has ended as well. So, what is my conclusion? That across regions, Black religiosity reveals how faith and identity intertwine the everyday struggle for dignity and visibility in Brazil. You see that those people, those Black people, those disabled people, LGBTQ people, and women are much more colligated with those religions that are for the excluded, as we see here in Brazil, and how that implies on the day-to-day data here in Brazil. So religion becomes both a refugee and a field of confrontation where Black women negotiate power, leadership, and belonging. Here in Brazil, we are much more like we have about 45% of the persons here in Brazil, of the people here in Brazil, are white, are declared as white people. And about 55%, so most of people here in Brazil are black persons. But that don't reflect on the government. You see the parliament of Brazil, there are much more men and white men in the parliament of Brazil, and they are all by the same religion, or they are Roman Catholic, or they are evangelical. And when you see a woman in Brazil, a woman in the parliament, especially a black woman in the parliament, she is from this African Brazilian religion. You see the disparity. These religions become a refuge and a field of confrontation. Is where they can have their will of negotiate power, leadership, and belonging. So through their spiritual practices, they preserve memory, challenge racism, and transform religion into a political and cultural force. Understanding this intersection shows that faith among Black Brazilians is not only spiritual, but deeply social and emancipatory, a living expression of resistance, agency, and hope. What I see the most is that their religion, the religion from these people, they express themselves as deeply social. It what happens in the society, in the Brazilian society. You see the composure of the Brazilian society. It's very much based on the religion of the people. You see, not only like this graphic I'm showing is much like things go in Brazil. This graphic, it's a pure representation on not only on the religion, but you see much of that in the parliament and the public policies that are applied in Brazil. They are formulated here in Brazil. They are much more for the white people and for men, although they are not for black persons and women, even though black persons and women are the majority here in Brazil. So when Taslima was saying about the apartheid that happened in South Africa, I often think of Brazil, even though that didn't happens here in Brazil as the form that happened on South Africa. It happens in the day to day at some point. We have our constitution say we are all equal, but in the day to day that doesn't apply. And I see that as a type of apartheid when black people, when women, when disabled people, when LGBTQ people don't have the same access to basic service like health. Here in Brazil, we have universal healthcare. So when those black people don't have access to health, even though we have the universal access healthcare, when they don't have the same access to scholarship, they don't have the same access to education, and they don't have the same access to public policies. So you see these disparities here in Brazil, and you see these disparities on the regions of Brazil. You see the parliaments, we have local parliaments here in Brazil, and you see these disparities too. When you go to the northeast of Brazil, you see much more, I think, much more like this than the other parts of Brazil, what they have so much disparities. So I think that's it. I think I just want to talk about how things work here in Brazil on the day to day. Much people think that Brazil it's a very inclusive country, and it is. I had to say it is a very inclusive country. It's a country of everybody, but Brazil has some struggles with this disparity of women, black people, LGBTQ people. Even though it's a big democracy, you have these disparities on the day to day.
Yes. Uh, yes. Thank you so much, Bruno, for your thought provocative and insightful presentation. Like when I was a kid, I just knew Brazil, that it is a country which produces a lot of coffee, and it is a country that has won five World Cups. That's it. Thank you so much for letting us know that this part which is quite unknown to most parts of the world related to Brazil. I just have one small question for you, that don't you think that the women who belong to the minority religious groups in Brazil, and also the LGBTQ plus communities who are from minority religious groups, they face a kind of double and triple marginalization, and how this problem can be tackled, how a kind of fairness and equity can be ensured? This is my question to you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I have two things to say. The first one is that we have two Brazils. The Brazil with, because Brazil here in Brazil, we say Brasil with an S. It's the country we have. It's Brazil with an S. So we have two Brazils. The Brazil with a Z, which the Brazil most people know, like I said, with the World Cups and the coffee and everything. And we have the Brazil with S, well, with an S. That is our real country with all the struggles. It's a common thing here to say that it has two Brazils, one with a Z and one with an S. So this is the first thing I was going to say. And answering your question, one thing that I like to say is that talking is the most important thing. Most of the problems here, they don't have a solution because people don't talk. And like we are doing right now, that is talking and saying that we have a problem and communicating other people. Maybe other people from here, from my country, are seeing or will see this panel discussion. They will be aware of what is happening and they can have their opinion changed. Most of things here in Brazil, I see that they don't have a solution because people don't talk, people don't know what is happening, or people don't care. But the people that don't care, they really only don't care because they don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening. They don't know, even though we have a big news spreading, people don't know what's happening, and people don't talk about the problems. So doing what we are doing here today, that is talking, it's one of the most important things that we can do to have our problem solved.
Okay, thank you so much, Bruno, for your presentation. We will now move to our third speaker. Our third speaker for this panel discussion will be Soumya Tiwari. Soumya Tiwari is a doctoral researcher in international business at Ford School of Management, New Delhi. She has completed her bachelor's degree in political science from Maitri College, University of Delhi, and her master's degree in political science with specialization in international relations from the University of Delhi. Additionally, she has a diploma in international affairs and diplomacy from the Confederation of Young Leaders. She has authored a book titled The Voice of a Soul, which is a collection of her quotes and poetry. At the corporate front, she was employed in the marketing and communications research department as an assistant manager, where she worked on specific client centric automotive projects. She also has a great passion for learning languages. She is proficient in French and Russian and has acquired a diploma in both languages from the School of Foreign Languages, Ministry of Defense. She currently serves as the deputy head of academics at the International Association for Political Science Students, IAPSS, Montreal, Canada. She previously served as a two-term chair of the Asia and Oceania Student Research Committee, AOSRC. IAPSS is a democratic student government recognized by the United Nations. She recently served as the instructor for conducting the archive masterclasses at IAPSS. Her research includes emerging markets, political risk, geopolitics, multinational enterprises, corporate political activities, trade, and multilateralism. She has presented her research papers in several conferences of repute, both at the national and the international levels, such as the Academy of International Business, AIB, Annual Conference at Seoul, South Korea, and a European International Business Academy, EIBA. And the most recent one was the Academy of International Business, AIB Annual Conference in the US. Further, she has also served as a reviewer to review manuscripts at the prestigious national and international conferences such as the Indian Academy of Management, INDAM, and the Academy of International Business, and the Australian and New Zealand Academy of Management, ANZAM. She will question about the interactions, like how stories are told, who gets to tell them, and how media, news, film, and even social media shapes perceptions of this interaction. So I request Soumya to present her lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manamukha, for such a warm introduction. I feel very humbled. And it feels very, yet again, privileged to be a part of IAPSS panel discussion series. So I would be talking about how the media narratives, how the stories are being communicated through the portrayal of literature, portrayal of art, because my other two co-speakers, Taslima, talked about that narrative from Iran and Afghanistan. Bruno talked about the perspective from Brazil. So I thought I would like to diverge a little deeper into inculcating and getting rich insights in providing how this narrative shapes through the portrayal of art. So, talking about the stereotype of the oppressed religious women in the backward region through the portrayal of media or through the portrayal of art, I feel that it's a regressive representational matrix. Now, why do I say that? It's because it is the narrative arc of making women a complex deeper into complex socio cultural realities, and often tracing them as being depicted as silent and confined to the private sphere. So this is most of the time, if you see our old historical literature, specifically in the medieval century, we see that she has been a passive subject into tracing out wanted to tracing out the modern intricacies but could not be able to do so because of the subjugation that they were subjected to. Examples for this includes a very different narrative when compared to the Western narrative and when comparing to the Indian narrative. Now, why we say that, it is because most of the movies that we see that, typically that were made during the 18th and the 19th century, it was focused more on the, having a conservative Hindu women confining to a private sphere, or having Muslim women traditionally wearing a burqa. I mean, of course, there are certain rules and there are certain norms that needs to be practiced in a religion or from any of the perspective. But there's a need to move beyond a certain perspective, because the way the things are portrayed, that is like necessarily going to be followed back in the society as well. Talking and focusing a little more from the perspective, when I mentioned the backward region, I want to again emphasize, even though Taslima did talk about how the examples of apartheid in Iran and Afghanistan, and she very clearly demarcated the clarity on the representation of women. Now, regions like Middle East in particular, or specific areas or specific regions within the India, have been often depicted in, and circumventing through the art of being considered as monolithic, culturally stagnant, or inherently drawing different boundaries from other narratives, projecting more of an image that women, a marginalized section of the society, not now anymore, has been subjected to practice or maintain household in the previous century. And this has outlined the sleek visuals even into the modern intricacies of today's generation, which where we feel that, if women are coming upward in talking about their own rights, it's not considered good. And when we compare this narrative to the Western ones, of course, it is being much appreciated because it is the idea of individuality which is given more important. Now, there have been certain counter narratives within this part, which is, there are different scholars in the existing strand of literature who have talked about that, women are considered as agent who are practicing different forms of tradition in order to secure their own position. But rather, there's also a narrative that, we need to respect, we need to maintain that integrity in the social stigma of the society in order to give them an identity. But my question and my central debate lies in this, that are we really giving that identity not only to the women but also to the marginalized sections of the society, particularly LGBTQ community as well? Now, the term has been expanded, of course. LGBTQI and plus has been on because uh, as the generations evolve, traditional traditions and the meanings and the narratives also evolve. And that is where we see that, a lot has to be examined, a lot has to be cultivated in the minds of the people, not only in terms of whether the source of their identity is emanating from a backward region. Perhaps no, this has no question in terms of providing the integrity or the social inclusion. What we merely see perhaps is the only a factor of social exclusion, which is not considered right in the Western narrative. However, most of the context, if we dig deeper in the Indian context, we see that it is being seen as that. Now, one of the foremost things that could be done in terms of assuring that, that integrity right now, when we have passed through that phase and we compare that narrative in the 21st century, we see a lot of the things has been changed, but traditional roots will not be changed because that has been portrayed or ingrained in the minds of the audience. Therefore, one I mean, I'm not sure which year it was, but I'm sure you all must be aware that there was this kind of hashtag movements that were going on, Me Too movement, or then there was this Dalit Women Rise, Queer Hindu caste. So, all these movements were going on, and this actually was a community building approach, which where people who did not recognize or did not integrate themselves with the majority of the sections of the society, they felt that this was one community that they could engage in and follow their own rights, and follow their own, they could just express themselves, that freedom of speech and expression that we constitutively talk about. So counterintuitively, that approach was there in order to provide them with a space where they are, exposed to self validation, or they are formed into group of network community where they are able to express themselves. Because most of the times we see that it is often that they're tied from all the ends and they get no support. So this was one of the initial initiatives that I really took it as a narrative in form of developing that arc of my understanding, that yes, on one hand we did hear very negative approaches to all these movements, but on the other hand, if we see that this was a platform that was given to these kind of people. Now, what other thing can be other there of course other alternative interpretations. It could be on the basis of challenging religious text, or it could be bringing out different feminist or subaltern perspectives. Now, my understanding does not lie just in um, demarcating boundaries in the religious texts or having a feminist or a subaltern perspective, but rather a collective understanding. So what we are right now moving forward with is basically having one approach and trying to initiate changes on the macro level without having a collective understanding of these kind of narratives through the media. Now, my second part of the discussion focuses more on how we see the art as a site of reimagination and resistance. Now, this comes from a very nice college experience, so which I'll just brief in 2 minutes, which is that I had an opportunity to attend a fest at uh, a college, and one of the hoarding was that my favorite season of all time is the fall of patriarchy. So this was one thing, and when we all girls saw it, it was something very interesting and very intriguing that uh, that came in our mind. On the other hand, when I looked back and reflected back, my question to myself was, is this even possible in the Indian society? Because the way I have seen generations from my grandmother, then my mother, and then also the younger generation than me, we all have been ingrained with certain elements in our mind that we are not able to move beyond that idea. So the question is, it is not about how you are developing that understanding, but how you are able to practice that, or how you are able to inculcate that in order to derive a change in the community. So art, for me, of course, it narrated a very unique story, very compelling story, challenging the hegemonic interpretations of different cultures or sociological lineages, thereby affecting the symbolism of the Indian society. But the question again lies in my debate is that, did it alter the transition that I wanted to bring into the society or to the community? It did not. Rather, the idea just came and it stigmatized and eradicated everything that no, the change cannot be done because this is what I have seen in the movies and this is what I have been reading even in the societal textbooks. Now other thing is sometimes visual art, when we see the dominance of uh, patriarchal and the matriarchal mindset. Even I'm so appreciated to talk about that most of the northeastern states do talk about and do follow the matriarchal culture or the matrilineal culture. But things will take a lot of time, a lot of regulatory framework and mechanism needs to be in place in order to reassure its understanding, in order to delve deeper into inculcate or bring a change together through the form of a media. Because of course media is also a mass appealing communication, so it's a narrative that we see and we try to bridge in. But whether we are able to barge in together, it's not uh, one I would say it's not a one time thing. It's a more of a collective effort that needs right support from the micro level to the macro level, and also of course the meso level. So for the visual arts, one thing that I would like to understand and I would like to focus on more, which is that I have not read this artist, but I follow a page Quora, so I've read it about this artist there. That artist like Shirin Neshta. So this person uses a very powerful imagery to explore the intricacies and the complexities of the female identity. So her work, has been showcased on a global level as well, where she has been challenging different narratives about power, about violence, and about devotion. And similarly, now a lot of South Asian artists have also been trying to capture all this kind of things in their miniature painting. Um, in order to depict their love for the community, in order to depict that art form which is making a powerful contribution to the Indian society. So of course it is not about how you are able to subjugate that interpretation, but how well you are able to explore and understand within your own self. That is one of the very powerful thing media communication plays in. Second is that I have been also attending a lot of cultural festivals, which because I really like, because somewhere I feel that it also gives me some sense of message in the end. So my only purpose of attending is that I get to learn something. So one example I would that lot of artists have also been focusing on how Sufi music in particular has also been practiced by the women. So now we saw that there was, during the medieval period, we saw only the men, transforming or transitioning to that dimension. However, over the period of time, we also see now women also practicing Sufi, which is, a more intricate form of having authoritative and female spiritual authority. Uh, and women have been coming at the forefront. But again, that space is very limited because not much is appreciated. And this, if we compare it with the uh, most of the Islamic countries, they would not be appreciable with this idea because that is not much prevalent. So the discourse has been pertinently remained very, very silenced and amplified, to quote directly. But a lot has to be changed, a lot has to be understood. How patriarchal will go to matriarchal, patrilineal, patrilocal, matrilocal. All these six dimensions have to go in tandem. Only then we are able to bring that change, bring that community, and to shape the media narrative. Because unless and until we are able to shape uh, our own understanding, or we are just only perplexed with the preconceived notions that we have seen from the generations, nothing is going to change. So the better is how how sharpened the narrative is. That is the effective communication of the stories that we are able to contribute. That's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for this engaging discussion. I I just have two questions for you. The first question is, how do popular media and film perpetuate stereotypes about the oppressed religious women or the backward region? And what is the counter narrative to it? What is your take on this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manamukha, for raising such an interesting question. First, as I already mentioned, that in my discussion while I was talking about different narratives, I think it's all about how the perception has been shaped right from the child has taken a birth until the time he or she grows up. For example, while growing up, I was taught by my own mother that a male is the only head of the family. A household has to run by the female. And this was also taught by my both paternal and external grandmothers. So till the time I grew up and I stepped uh, into college, I only had this narrative, but I always thought that I wanted to make a difference other than not just being subjugated to the household. This is wrong. When I delve deeper into gaining that understanding, into understanding the intricacies in Indian society, I felt we are not even 1% of how things should be done. Because we really, in the Indian constitution, we talk about right to equality. It's not about giving equal rights. It's not about that equality. It's about the respect. For me, it's about the respect. It's about the integration. We are not making somebody socially so excluded that even after they're having their own rights, they're feeling suffocated. They do not have a voice. And other than that, they do not have a space to talk about of what their own beliefs. So I always follow E.B. Taylor's work, where he has pertinently mentioned that, culture is a way of life. It is how, you share beliefs, you share assumptions. But the question is, does it really remain in the Indian society, in the contextual of the Indian society? We're not really circumventing this way. And a lot has been dependent on social media. uh, if we see a woman is asking for rights, if we see that, women are advocating something, it has also always been treated as that we are just raising our flags of feminism. Perhaps that's not true. Talking about or argumenting about anything is not feminism. It has a different meaning, it has a different connotation altogether. So this narrative has to shift from giving mutual respect, mutual equality, and integration in the Indian society. That's all marginalized community, not particularly in women, but all marginalized communities want. Talking about the backward region, see, a person is is born and it is not determined by the place of the birth. But what we do, oh, this person is coming from this place, that means he's like that. We always have our preconceived notions. We all have our stereotypical connotations involved with something or the other when we hear something, which is not integrated well within the society. So the question of the region, the question of the occupation, of course, we have all been reading about it. It should not be there, but it is there. So now the only thing that we can do is, rather than having a collective, having asking the government to resolve something or asking the policy makers to advocate something, to have a collective approach in order to portray something, a narrative which is giving up a story, which is leaving us a message, and also trying to formulate a community which is giving space to every single one of the people coming from the marginalized communities. Another example I would also want to highlight here is about the counter narrative. So, of course, where there are pros, there are cons as well. So when we say that women have been advocated for their rights, and of course there's another story which we keep hearing in the newspapers, that somebody misused their rights. But the point is the ground of justice equally granted? No. For the LGBTQI community, and additional, if I talk about, uh, it's a human experience and it can happen to anyone. But then why those people are not allowed to free themselves? They're always find subjugated, isolated. That's why these community is trying to move beyond India, across borders, so that they can have their own identity. The whole question through a narrative is only remain and confined to the identity. That's all from my side. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Yes, yes, thank you. I have just one more question for you. That how is art, like literature, music, visual arts, like every art that we talk about, is being used to reimagine tradition and resist patriarchal interpretations of region and a regional culture. Thank you.
Yeah. So, paintings have been ongoing as a folklore tradition of the Indian society from a very, very long time, since time immemorial. But a lot of artists, a lot of storytellers have tried to bring out the narratives, and when I also talked about, this hoarding, when I saw in a fest, it was the fall of patriarchy. And, it is just there, it remains in our mind for just that moment when we see it. The question and the debate lies in how well we are trying to change it. Nobody talks about that. How well we are trying to, make it more inclusive. We don't do that. And as far as the paintings are concerned, we've had a lot of paintings which focused on treating women as an ideal figurine of symbolism, devotion, and as a warrior, and the roots of femininity were always there. But how well we were able to capture that? We were not able to capture that because we were taught, it was ingrained in the minds of the people, in minds of the Indian society in particular, that women are just confined and the marginalized community are just not good for nothing, and they're just confined to do lower uh, tasks. Perhaps that is not the question. So how well, again, this is interlinked with the first question that you had asked. So how well we are able to communicate, it is not just uh, the it is not just the part of the particular time, but it is more about how you are dissecting that path and trying to bring out a change for both the communities. So, and I do agree with the fact that you cannot change things in an overnight. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of mechanisms, it takes a lot of approvals, it takes a lot of policy. But why don't we have a policy in place, whether it's uh, women, whether, even though some are there, but we don't really find that very suitable. It is only workable when it has a lot of very robust government centric approach. Same goes for the LGBTQI and additional. And third is, also for the transgender community, I would want to highlight here is that they had also been given a very differential treatment. uh, at the moment, of course, they have been considered as a third gender according to the Supreme Court order, but they are also being exposed to a lot of social exclusion. They're not being very open, right? So how these things can be bridged through the portrayal of narrative. It's basically a narrative that you're presenting. So it's a collective effort. It's a storytelling approach. It's a approach where we all can resonate with that. Yes, we are talking about equality, we are talking about freedom of speech and expression, but in actuality, in practice, it's not there with us. So that is how the question has to be bridged when we focus on more on the paintings, the art, the music. So that is what it is. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Soumya, for your presentation. We have our fourth and the final speaker, Aman Maheshwari. So, just let me introduce him to the audience. Aman Maheshwari is a senior doctoral fellow in OB and HR domain at Ford School of Management, New Delhi. He has completed his bachelor's in business administration from the Institute of Management Studies University Courses campus. He has done his post graduation in the domain of marketing and financial management from Institute of Management Studies, Institute of Management Studies, Ghaziabad. He has done his second post graduation as postgraduate program in human resource management and leadership from Soil Institute of Management. At the corporate front, he has held significant positions in a diverse range of organizations like Nestle, Mondelez, Franchise India, and Enco Engineers Combined. He has conducted various workshops in different institutes on various types of literature reviews. He has also oriented his lectures towards the understanding of practitioners at IIT Delhi. He has also presented his papers at both the national and international levels. In the year 2024, his paper was also accepted at the Australian and New Zealand Academy of Management, Anzam. He was recently invited to chair two sessions at the Academy of International Business AIB annual conference in the US. He also currently serves as the reviewer for the International Journal for Business and Society. His research areas include green HRM, employee green behavior, sustainable HRM, and green organizational culture. And Aman will speak on the perspective of the LGBTQI plus community. So thank you. So Aman, the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mino, for such a warm introduction. I guess before starting, I think the beauty of the last speaker is when people say don't speak last because you don't get sufficient time to speak. But I think my approach towards speaking last is actually very different. I feel that speaking last gives you a beauty to actually develop that intensity that you have lot to speak, but you have to manage in time. So yes, so bear with me next 10 minutes, and I promise I'm not going to bore you with lot of topic. 10 minutes and sufficient. So two things. I was having a cup of coffee yesterday night when I was preparing for it, and I got a message from, okay, fine, you have this particular topic and you have to speak on that. And I was seriously amazed because the reason is my research area is actually very, very different. So it gives me another opportunity to actually go through in this particular aspect, which is indeed very interesting. And after carefully researching on the same, I got to know people have a different perception, and the perception is only and only based upon what they see in the society. Instead, the sociologists, the different sort of psychologists, the early literature have altogether very different perception. And if you actually build that perception and implement it now on onwards, the complete practical aspect, the psychology that we have towards them will absolutely get changed. So two things that I want to discuss upon in this particular respect is, one thing is how LGBT individuals actually navigate. And when they navigate, it's very often the conflicting demand of the religious community. It could be our regional culture, and it could also be a gender identity. But trust me, this journey is actually very, not simple to compromise, but it is actually very complex. And reason I'm saying it is very actually complex is because of the identity negotiation. And it identity negotiation is actually we are drawing upon a simple fact of postmodern and queer theoretical frameworks, which were cited in the literature, very well cited, but we don't imply it because there is no need to imply it. It is just we are following a simple sociological perception which needs to be changed. So I have 3 points which I want to discuss in this particular aspect. Is number one point is which is very important is about how you can actually maintain a balance between a hermeneutical resistance and a queer reading practices. Very important. So individuals often engage in a deliberate reinterpretation, I'll say, of a very these sacred text. This interpretation is not limited. Actually, it goes moves beyond a literal reading to what feminist and queer scholars call it a humanometrics of suspicion. And this suspicion automatically generates. And the reason why I'm saying it generates is because it is uncovering that what we call patriarchal and heteronormative assumptions that we actually have in our mind. We are not able to actually get rid of them. The reason is very simple. For example, they might highlight the conventional love between David and Jonathan in that, what we have read in Bible, and we have read on the focus of Quran's universal messages of justice and compassion, which is very important. But we are forgetting all those. We should be very specific. We are only and only focused on those context bound injunctions that needs to be removed. Why we have to do this, I really don't have any clue. Why actually people are actually following this. Number two, this intellectual work transforms their faith from a source of condemnation to a source of affirmation. So I'm pointing out, I think I personally feel that it is very important that it is a journey from a transformation where you actually condemnate a source to a source which affirmates, right? Second point, which I feel is very important in the context of, I'll say I'll not compare those to the developed and developing nations of the globe, but to everywhere which I feel. In fact, when I went to US, when I went to Athens, irrespective of their culture and irrespective of what we call in Indian culture, there was, and that is religious disaffiliation. And religious disaffiliation and the construction of post-traditional spirituality. Very, very important. Now, for some regions, we feel the conflict is reconcilable, leading to what other socialists say in the literature, which we'll call as religious disaffiliation. However, this is a rarely a descent into pure secularism. Instead, many embark on a spiritual quest, a concept that has been emerged from specific, spiritual revolution. So it was a spiritual revolution to note, I guess, to all those who are reading the socialist literature. Spiritual revolution actually is a concept that has been given by Paul Hillas. And he very well, the researchers very well said that it is a concept which is actually responsible for crafting a personalized bricolage of spiritual practices drawn from mysticism, mindfulness, nature-based traditions, etc. Now, if all these things actually comes into picture and we actually following these things, and ultimately this is leading to a social justice, which we are not following. So ultimately everything gets improved. My second point, which I want to highlight, is upon the majority minority regional dynamics, which people are not discussing about, which is very important. I think everything why we are actually focusing on LGBTQ is, why Bruno and Soumya, I guess they have discussed too much upon all these things and these emerging issues. I think the base point is here only. The base point lies upon the majority minority regional dynamics on gender norms and religious freedom. We're not discussing about that. Now, this is dynamic inward the typical power structure. Why I'm discussing about the power structure is because it is creating a complex interplay where a historically subordinated group of LGBTQ becomes a demographic and political majority within a specific regions. and religion also, leading to a contested sovereignty. Important point. Now, in this, one should take care of a very simple fact, that is weaponization of authenticity, which is important. The reason is that regional majority often seeking to preserve its distinct identity and against a national assimilatory culture, a culture which is formed of shared assumptions, culture forming certain sort of beliefs, culture forming certain sort of norms. I really feel it is not in the case of majority minority. All these assumptions, norms, what we call, what have been made, what have been actually formed under this umbrella of culture should be equal for everybody. And that is what equalization gives you a right. You have the right to do whatever you want to do, irrespective of what others are saying is just their perception. Don't involve their perception, don't force their perception to one community. That is absolutely not fair. In Indian constitution, what we say, right to equality, it lies in this concept also. Why we are actually not, neglecting this particular concept? I feel it should have been there. Now, this is important to a very important case, that if you want to change the perception of this majority minority, if you want to change the perception, and if you want to feel, if you want to see these LGBTQ community to a level which is actually equal in the society, number one thing you need to focus upon is don't perceive they are equal, they are what we are doing, they are doing. They're having the chain of restaurants opened in certain areas of the country where they are not taking waiters, they're not taking waiters from a normal community, they're hiring these LGBTQ people because they are actually doing wonder. And that should be the case, because they don't feel a differentiation between a normal person who is a postgraduate or a graduate from IIMS or IITs to handling a hospitality chain. They are actually taking into consideration these normal people who don't consider themselves to be abnormal. And that's difference, only difference that you have to make from a transition, from a transformation, from a perception of journey from being abnormal to a normal. And I suffice my case. Thank you so much for this, for giving me this opportunity to discuss on this. And I'm open to any sort of questions on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aman, for this discussion. Like, one word that I can say is that it's a perfect cherry on the top that you have actually, provided for this entire panel discussion. Your final speaker means it has truly left us with a food of thought. I have, two questions for you. The first question is that in what ways do political movements use the triad of gender, a religion, and a regional identity to mobilize support and exclude minorities? And my second question is, how do trans and non-binary individuals challenge the gender binaries inherent in many religious legal systems? Thank you.
Oh God, you have again put me into this, big words which I really don't know. I'm just gonna, and thank you so much for these two questions, because I think this is very important to be answered. And you have given me another field to actually analyze on this particular aspect. Number one question of yours, which you clearly mentioned about a triad, right? I feel you mentioned about the triad of what we call gender, religion, and the regional identity, if I'm correct, right? So I think this, if this triad we're focusing upon, is a potent tool for me. It is a potent tool for constructing what political scientist Benedict Anderson. So he's a very famous scientist in the area of political science. I guess the researchers on political science must clearly, very familiar of this particular name. And he said a concept called as imagined community. And beautiful concept. And this concept says defining who belongs and who does not. Still, we are actually unable to define between who actually belongs and who does not. And that's why these cases are in a very high pertinence, and which makes no sense. In order to resolve this, there are 3 points which I want to discuss in a very, very brief. Number one is we actually need to instrumentalize the traditional values. Number one, And I'm just want to give you an example. For example, political movements often construct an idealized or maybe a mythical past where traditional gender roles, a dominant religion, or a pure religion or a national identity were unchallenged. And this actually happens. Now, what happens is there is a gentleman called Eric Hobsbawm, and he has given a concept called pluralism versus feminist demands as external threats to this sacred order. And they create a very powerful us versus them dynamic that we want to differentiate between who we call us and who we call them. And for instance, the promotion of the family values agenda, which is actually very dominant in the country like India, which we are very proud of, that we want to actually focus on only the values that have been given by the family, our family, right? And they say that this particular agenda often serves as a coded language to oppose both gender equality and queer existence, which is actually uniting a base around a shared cultural identity. Number one point. Number 2 point in this particular aspect is about the figure of internal order, which is very important. I think to solidify group cohesion, this is very important that movements created a scapegoat. Now, it is an internal other which is simply existence is presented as a contamination of the body politic. So you don't have to do that. The queer individual, the religious minority, for example, it could be, it could be maybe any religion, it could be any caste under that particular religion, which and the consummation elite are often conflated into this particular figure because we are focusing only on that. Now they are portrayed as simultaneously undermining gender norms. I don't know why, and I'm really searching for this. Why they do that? So actually, you have to remove this. And what they do is they do simple one thing, that is a deviant workplace behaviors or deviant sexuality that they do. Now, religious purity through pluralism or maybe secularism, very simple agenda where they don't have anything. They focus on these two words. I don't know, these big words have been used in a way that they don't even make sense. You use a word where it needs to be actually implemented and where it makes sense. Don't use it just for the use of sake. You have to use it because ultimately it will change the whole picture. And ultimately, that actually tarnishes that particular image as a nation, which from a regional loyalty, it actually tarnishes your national loyalty through a globalist or an anti-national values. Now, this is yours. I hope I have answered the second question. Now, going to the last question which you have asked me, and I guess the question was on trans, right? Trans and the non-binary individuals. What are the challenge that gender binary is inherent, right? So, I guess the challenge is not merely social. Please understand that for me, like this is my perception, that it is just not a social thing that you have to focus upon. It is much more than that. If you deep dig down, there are ontological and jurisprudential striking at the fundamental cosmologies of many religious traditions, which you have to figure out. So just hiking upon the society, okay, fine, because of the society, this happens. No, you are saying society because thousands of people are saying society. If thousands of people in the country are going to deep dig down and they are founding some n number of reasons, then you will say, okay, fine, there are n number of reasons. I don't follow people. Follow your own faith. Follow your own, literature. Follow what it is all about. So don't just focus upon what people are saying. So just 2 points in this particular aspect. Number one is um, it's not just about challenge. Please understand, it's about this cosmological order. And I just want to understand, like, make you understand what cosmological order it is about. What I'm saying is, so many religious legal systems. For example, it could be Jewish, it could be traditional Christian, it could be maybe certain laws under Islam, and are built upon a divinely ordained gender binary that is seen as reflecting as a cosmic principle. For example, male female complementarity in a Catholic natural law. It could be a trans, it could be a non binary existence directly determined by assigned sex. They force a theological crisis which is not there in our society. Don't discuss upon all these things. They're demanding a re-examination of the very categories of male and female upon which the countless religious laws are made. And these laws actually don't inherit much because we don't discuss upon that. We just focus only on the superficial aspect of what society is saying. And the last point which I want to make, and I'll end my discussion on that, is upon how you'd be able to redefine the ritual and sacred space, which is very, very important. So the challenge is profoundly practical because it forces religious communities to answer the questions like, which bathroom does a trans woman use for ritual, right? We don't answer about these questions. Why we don't answer? Why we are actually focusing upon their presence demands the creation of new inclusive rituals and the regendering of a language. There are certain language, thereby decoupling religious practice from a strict male to female dichotomy. This is a form of grassroots that you have to, that you have to trigger, that you have to trigger yourself, that you have to ask for yourself. And that is a theology that works to change religious law from the ground up by demonstrating its, inadequacy in the face of lived experience. I feel you can change the future of LGBTQs, trans people, and their future is as bright as normal people. Please understand, they are not abnormal. They are living like us. They are doing work like us. In fact, I can say from my own experience, better than us. So I think this journey, this thinking should be changed. And on this positive note, I'm going to end up my discussion. I hope I answered your two questions. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Yes. Uh, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that Soumya wants to say something. She has raised her hand. So if you want to say something, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I just wanted to add on a perspective because Aman really traced out the transgender narrative and the pluralist in the pluralist society, and then he also talked about how the binary and the non-binary community. And he did quote a lot of intellectual scholars in a speed. So I would like to add and more emphasis on that, which was like, even in the literature, specifically writers like Camilla Shamise, on her work in Home Fire, or Elif Shafak, where he in the I think I'm not sure about the title of the work, but I think most probably it's the 40 Rules of Love, and how they both classically they emphasize on telling the narrative and the stories in order to explore the contemporary dilemmas and the dichotomies, which you very pertinently pointed out that how it is important to integrate the sections of the society in forming a community rather than questioning them. So I really liked when you were talking in your debate how what kind of rituals or what kind of a room should a trans woman use in order to perform its its own rituals. Similarly for different communities as well, you clearly demarcated and directly dissected out that this narrative, these dilemmas question certain patriarchal norms which has been already been preconceived, and also when it is subjugated to Islamic women or other communities, so it is being subjugated or perceived as um, differing or a nationalist interpretation of Islam. So the giving voice, as you said, is very important to the inner lives of not only to a person, giving them the identity, but also making that space for the sacred or a religious text, showcasing the intellectual and the emotional complexity of both, because you know our religious texts never bifurcated the sections. It's the humans who did it. So when the religion perspective is bringing the community all together. Who are we to bifurcate it? So the whole question certainly suspects on this dimension, that how this voice of a narrative would be an ideal tool, or can be treated as a weapon of an ideal storytelling in order to maximize the interest of the community and minimize their subjugation. That's all from my side.
Yes, thank you. That's a very interesting point to add on. I thank to all the speakers, and now I leave the audience for their questions. If you want to ask any question, if you want to raise any question, please address it to the speaker. And well, um, I just guess that the speakers have presented it so well, and they have clarified the concepts, that there is no room for questions at all. They have actually clarified the concept so well. So if you do not have any questions from the audience side, then we can go for the vote of thanks. So yes, yes, thank you for the flawless execution and professional organization at the recent panel discussion. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the IAPSS organization for organizing this panel discussion. I extend my vote of thanks to the head of academics, Professor Shomudeep Chaudhary, for his unwavering support. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the respected speakers here, Taslima Tariq, Bruno Matos, Soumya Tiwari, and Aman Maheshwari, for their insightful lecture and engaging discussion. It was absolutely thought provocative, encouraging, motivating. Lastly, I thank all the audience for their presence, for their patience, and for their attention. Finally, let us make a pledge in this panel discussion, that may we stop simply reading history and begin to change it from his story to her story. Thank you so much. And our head of academics, Professor Shomudeep Chaudhary, wants to address it, wants to have a minute with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it was a pretty lovely session. It went on a little bit more than we had expected, but nevertheless, more is always merrier, provided we are having an insightful discussion. So I take this opportunity to thank the moderator, Mono Mukhar Ghosh, who is also the vice chair of this SRC, along with Taslima Tariq. So thank you for moderating the session so well. I think you have thanked us enough. So our gratitude also goes out to you as the moderator for this session, for beautifully presiding over the deliberations. And thank you, my most esteemed panelists, Taslima, Aman, and Soumya, who is also heading the Gender SRC currently. My word of thanks also go out to Dr. Meenakshi Bansal, who has played a pioneering role always in getting this SRC together, and she continues to be a mentor for all of us. Many of us who currently head SRCs or hold different positions at IAPSS have at some point in time been mentored by her. So thank you once again for being there. And members of the audience, thank you so much for making this a fruitful discussion, because it's again after a long time that the Gender SRC did an impactful session, a houseful session with more than a double-digit count. And I hope that this is the spirit that you continue in the months to come. Thank you so much.
Yes, so thank you so much to each and everyone. I now formally conclude this session. So it was a very engaging, a thought provocative discussion with all of you. So thank you so